And with that, we go to the gentleman from Pennsylvania who has been patiently waiting, Mr. Meehan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would like to begin to follow up a little bit on some of the information that was generated by my colleague from Oklahoma, because I'm standing and holding in my hand as well a questionnaire for one of the organizations that made an application. But their application was made in 2009. It's now 2013, and they still have not gotten a response. And yet here we are, 39 questions that are being asked. This is the second level of questioning. Now, we hear some of this. This is all being done for efficiency purposes and other kinds of things, and yet we have people that have 39 questions that they're asking on subsequent organizations. So the issue I have for you is there an ability to have these questions resolved? Frustrating to me. You know, the whole question here is, we've heard this from time to time, just about accountability. And in all the scandals, we hear the same thing from time after time by the government officials that are involved. Benghazi, IRS, AP reporters, Fast and Furious. Time after time, we're hearing people, wasn't my job, I don't know, it was the other office, I was recused. I didn't find out about it until you found out about it. Where does the accountability begin? People's lives are on the line in these things overseas. People's constitutional rights are at stake here. Where does the accountability begin? I'll close with one comment. This was the President of the United States himself. These were his words on January 21st, 2009 in the memorandum. Governments should be transparent. Transparency promotes accountability and provides information for citizens about what their government is doing. Then he spoke to the heads of the organizations, and these were his words. Let me say it as simply as I can. Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency. Don't let this president and this nation down.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Just
a quick point of order, if I could.
From Ohio seeks recognition.
I mean, I hope what Mr. Meehan said is right on target. I hope the chairman will look at calling in groups who, the victims, 4.5 years. I would love to have them in front of us, explaining what took place and what they had to go through. I hope we'll do that at a subsequent date.
I will direct staff to attempt to vet groups that can come before as witnesses. As the gentleman knows, and I think it's been said here, there's tremendous sensitivity as to personal information, but we certainly would welcome those groups asking us and then vet an appropriate panel. Mr. George, when in my opening statement I did talk about something we talked about personally, which was that you could not rule out that there were other problems because of questions about internal controls, that discussion we had. I assume in response to Mr. Meehan, the same is true. Today you may not be able to speak to intervention that came from above or any other place, but you can't rule out that there was some at some time. That is correct, sir.
Thanks so much, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Wolin, do you have meetings with Mr. Shulman and his then Deputy Commissioner Miller? Did you do that on a fairly regular basis?
I had, Congressman, quarterly management review meetings where we looked at broad issues with respect to the budget and to how their IT refresh was going and so forth. Again, taking full cognizance of this relationship with the IRS where we didn't engage in discussions, didn't work in the details of tax administration or tax enforcement.
Right. So, okay, roughly 4 times a year, you sit down, go over the budget, talk things through. That's good. They were, in terms of report stream, you're the appropriate person for that to happen in Treasury. I understand that. So, you regularly have this meeting, and you discuss budget issues. But this issue about IRS employees targeting conservative groups, did that ever come up in any of these meetings?
It did not. I have no recollection of that at all, Congressman.
Okay, so knowing what you now know, do you think there might have been a concerted effort to kind of prevent the report stream? I mean, prevent this from coming to you?
I don't know, Congressman, exactly what was going on within the IRS on this. What I know is that, in general, and this is Treasury IRS relationships for many administrations now of both political parties.
No, I understand.
Right.
We're not saying the IRS is a venerable organization, but certainly not as bad as what we've come to find out in this problem. So in May of 2012, the IRS had completed an internal review and investigation. Were you informed of that internal review and investigation?
No, Congressman, as I testified earlier this morning, I learned of that just in the last few days.
Okay, so no. Okay.
Right.
But were you informed, you were informed in June 2012 that the IG was undertaking their audit or review, right?
I'm not sure precisely, Congressman, when it was, but at some point, Mr. George came to me and said that he was undertaking an audit.
May, June, July, summer 2012.
Some point in 2012.
Some point in 2012? Was it perhaps before the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November? Just to establish as a fact here.
It may have been, Congressman.
Okay.
As again, I don't precisely recall when it was.
Mr. George, do you have some further vague recollection? Was it perhaps hot outside, or were you wearing an overcoat? I mean, some time frame for me. Not to be glib about it, but
No, sir. No, it was in the summer of 2012.
Okay, thank you. So, in the summer 2012, you're informed the IG is undertaking this review. Does this raise any sort of concern with you?
Well, what it raises for me is what I said earlier, which is once the IG is looking at an issue,
No, I understand. I'm separate from that. I'm not saying you go to Mr. George and try to manhandle him and say, don't do this. I'm not making that accusation, okay? Just to be clear. What I'm saying is he brings this very serious matter to you. You've received letters from the left and the right in Congress to the Department of Treasury, among various other administration officials, right? They send letters to the Treasury and to the IG. It's their press reports. In the spring of that year, there's some concern. Your IG comes forward and says, look, we're going to take this review. Don't you go, this is kind of, a good thing? Bad thing? Come on, give me some sort of sense of your emotions. You're a human person, too.
Congressman, I did not have awareness of this issue before. I don't believe.
No. I'm not talking about your learning. I'm talking about your feelings. Let's talk about your feelings then. And when you heard the IG is going to do this, you're serving a president. The president appointed you. You're Senate confirmed. Very important position. You're there from the beginning of the administration. The IG comes to you and says, we're looking into this very damning thing. It's a presidential election year. You don't say for a minute, this is kind of frightening.
He didn't come to me with conclusions, Congressman. He came to me with the fact of the audit. So what I said to him was, this is important, and you should follow the facts where they lead.
Okay, so then take me from there. Do you tell anybody?
No, not until much later.
When? Like when?
I don't know. I can't remember, but some point later, I came to learn that the IG had also told the fact of his audit to some other folks.
No. So we're talking about summer of 2012. The election is coming up. It's unclear who's going to win. Your guy that nominated you, I assume you still support him, but in 2012, you're looking at this election year, and you don't pick up the phone and say to your contacts at the White House, which, and say, just as a heads up, this could actually hit the fan in a presidential year.
I did not, Congressman.
Okay. And you don't tell anybody in the Office of Counsel at the White House?
I did not.
Okay. So the first time you'd learned about conservative groups being targeted by the IRS was when this report came out.
The first time I learned that there was before the report came out, a draft of the report was shared with IRS, and IRS staff, as I think is now public, had conversations with some people at the Treasury Department. I didn't have any understanding of the details, but I understood from Mr. George, I think at some point in the last set of weeks, that this was going to be a report that was going to reach a very damning conclusion. But I didn't have any understanding.
Did you give a heads up to the White House Chief of Staff?
I did not.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for your indulgence. The absurdity of this is that when a huge accusation is being undertaken by an Inspector General in a presidential year, it is beyond me to think that an administration official wouldn't have maybe. Let me ask another question. Did you contact Chicago about it?
The gentleman's time has expired. Make it very quick.
Did you contact the campaign about it?
I never had any contact.
Okay,
Thank
to
you.
make sure. Thank you.
Mr. George, just for the record, the date that the draft was shared, to your recollection, I think it's on your timeline.
A draft was shared with whom, sir?
With the Treasury.
Well, it would have been shared with the, we don't share drafts with the Treasury. We share them with the IRS.
I'm sorry, you shared with the IRS, and I thought there was a date you shared with the Consul for Treasury. Yeah. Maybe I don't have that draft in front of me. You shared an unofficial draft. I just want to know if you have an official date on that one event. I just want it in the record.
March 28th, 2013, a discussion draft report was shared with the Internal Revenue Service.
Okay, so that's the date with the IRS.
Correct.
And the 27th was the acting commissioner.
Yeah, I have monthly meetings with the acting commissioner and his principal deputies, and we indicated.
So outside of the Office of the Inspector General, before or after March 27, 28, were any other drafts or portions of drafts circulated outside of your direct reports?
If the question is whether TIGTA, my office, shared drafts, we would have shared drafts with the IRS, I believe.
Right. In this discussion draft, or this set of timelines you gave us,
right,
we only had the IG function head briefing, including the acting commissioner, and the discussion draft issued to the IRS the next day. Are there any other days in which discussion drafts or preliminary or portions were shared with anyone outside of your direct reports as the IG?
Sir, during the course of an audit, there is a back and forth sharing of information between the subject of the audit and our organization.
But the reason I ask is Mr. Shulman knows nothing. Mr. Wolin knows nothing in almost any of these areas, either doesn't remember or didn't know. So can you make available to us, to the greatest extent possible, those back and forth discussions that occurred with anyone, including Ms. Paz and others, so that we have a complete record of sort of who knew what when? Because, as you know, we didn't know any of this until long after the 28th of March.
Very good. We will provide that.
Thank you.